What if everything you thought and believed about successful buying, selling, and financing your home was wrong? Welcome to HomeWise with Michael Miget. This is where you can count on straightforward, objective advice on the right way to make the most out of every dollar you put into your home. Whether it's buying, selling, or financing, even maintaining and growing its value along the way. Coming to you from the News Talk STL studios at Union Station in St. Louis, here's your host, Michael Miget.
It's a wonderful day because we get to talk about things that really matter. HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. My name is Paul Cook. How are you doing, Mike?
I'm good, Paul. How are you?
Excellent. Excellent. We're going to talk about some really important stuff today, an important topic, and I think you have unique insight on this today, which I find pretty exciting. Why don't you break it down or tell us about it better than I can?
I do, and it's sometimes we explore my pet peeves on this show. So today is one of those days, and it stems a lot from we hear a lot about the market, how bad it is. It's a tough market. So if I'm talking with industry folks, it's a tough market. If we're talking about buyers, it's a tough market. If we're talking about sellers, it's a tough market. The news is searching out the bad parts of it because it's more newsworthy, it's more interesting, it sells more subscriptions, papers, whatever it is they're trying to sell. And but for the rest of us that have to either work there or live in the real world, it causes issues, it causes problems. Okay. And I was thinking about this week, and I said, because it's something that we that we go through. Times like this call for leadership. All right. Now, I know that's sort of it's a big word. It could mean a lot of things, but it reminds me of this market is one of those that reminds me of a quote that I heard once. And it goes a little something like, when you're going through hell, just keep going, right? Don't stop, don't dwell, just plow right on through as fast as you can to get to the other side.
Yeah, don't seize up.
Because what's the alternative, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's the market. It's all around us. It is what it is. We cannot change it. It is bigger. It's bigger than we are. I think the Fed has proven that. Even they cannot completely control it like they're trying to, although they're really trying.
They're putting in the effort there, at least a lot of action.
Yep. But times like this call for leadership, all right? And it's important at the top, at the industry level, all right? And it's also important at the transaction level, right? So, and then I have sandwiched in there's a strategy level that I needed something. I just needed some way to, point out there's something that I do that I think is sorely missing most of the time. But
it's important.
It is important. And it's easy for clients to get caught up in the news. All right. It's our responsibility as leaders, right? So take that leadership role to set that narrative straight. All right. With a long-term outlook, an affordably purchased family home is still a fine investment.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Besides, as we've said before, you have to live somewhere. Okay. So you're either going to rent or you're going to buy. It's the roof over your head. It is a financial investment, but it has utility. All right. And so when you mix all that up, you come up with what I said.
Mm-hmm. There's some musts there, aren't there, Mike? Like there's some musts. You're going to live. You got to live somewhere.
Right.
Right. You got to make this payment somehow to do that. And you want to do it right. But the news can freak you out.
It is. And, I read a lot. I study a lot. I research a lot. That's a part of leadership. And part of that this past week, this is really what kind of spurred this thought, was I was watching a YouTube video, and it was a financial advisor, and he was talking about buy versus rent and his formula for how you do that. Or actually, it was referred to as the formula. He was explaining it to us.
The formula.
And he got it wrong. Like, I couldn't believe it. He got it wrong. Right? This is a video, 1 million views on it. All right. He got it wrong. Well, okay. He got it mostly right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But he got a little piece wrong. So if you remember last week when we were talking about the difference between the way a home appreciates, and it's the home value that goes up, not the home equity that goes up per se, even though home equity goes up as the values go up. But it's the home itself that's the asset that will rise and fall in value. The equity is a calculation that goes along with that. And he missed the distinction between those two things.
Man.
And so his calculation was off. And I think that if you were going to follow that and you were really going to take notes and you were going to apply it, I think you might end up at the wrong conclusion. Like, it makes more sense to rent.
Yeah.
Okay. But he got it wrong. I couldn't believe it. So for me, leadership, it comes down to two things. All right. One is mastery. Okay. Mastery over it is whatever it is we're doing, whatever it is we're leading, like our profession in this case. So for me, it's mortgages. Okay. I just feel like I should be a master at what I do.
Knowing it all, knowing how to work it.
If I was my client, that's what I would expect, right?
Absolutely.
So clients are not in the best position to determine whether or not I have mastery over what I'm doing, okay? It may not ever even occur to them that there's a difference between good and better.
Yeah.
Or better and better or best, right?
Oh, it's a huge difference.
Sometimes it's just presented to them, oh, you need a loan, go find a loan. Here, talk to this guy. He'll get you pre-approved. You call the guy up. What can you get me? Well, here's what we can do. Here's what the guideline says.
I got a guy.
Here's that. I got a guy. Which, by the way, it's good to have a guy. You just want to make sure you have the right guy.
And make sure they have mastery. They're an expert.
Right. And so there is nothing that forces you to be a master. Like, we have to be licensed, but it doesn't force us to be a master or to have mastery. It just requires us to have proficiency, right? We know how to fill out some forms. We know the documents to ask for. They do background checks, things like that, to make sure we're not criminals, and sort of like a minimum, just like what you would expect for a profession's licensure. Not to discount any of that, but there's about 500,000 of us out there, licensed loan originators in the country. Maybe less by now because some aren't renewing their licenses, but I am. So
yeah, and so I'm
not going anywhere.
If you don't renew your license, you cannot offer that lending advice. I mean, advice, but you can't do it.
And that would be a decision to exit the industry.
Yes,
and they're exiting in droves because it's tough market out there right now. Remember, so. If you see, we are susceptible to it also. So leadership, mastery over what it is you do. It's kind of like the foundation of this whole show was a conduit to demonstrate mastery over how to structure a loan transaction to minimize the cost to a borrower over the ownership period of that home. How much to put down, what program should I do? How do we put that together? There's the ordinary way, and then there can be tweaks to make it better. Small tweaks up front, compound over time to make big changes on the back end. We've discussed that.
Massive, before. Really massive things I didn't know. You're right. That's a huge part of the show.
That's what I'm talking about when I refer to mastery. Okay, but there's also another component of leadership. And it's what I call ownership or responsibility over the outcome, in this case of the transaction, right? So within our profession, within having that mastery or whatever, we're going to do business with people, right? I'm going to get brought in to work on a loan, to do a loan, provide financing, to get this family into their new home. I just view it as, if I'm going to be a leader, if I'm going to be the best at what I do, and I want to stand up in front of people and tell people that, I need to have ownership of the outcome of what I do.
Another huge distinction, Michael Miget, listening to HomeWise Radio, HomeWiseRadio.com. Some people say, okay, I got the business, I'm going to manage it, but they aren't in charge of the outcome. That's huge, man.
Right. It's accepting the responsibility for the ownership of the outcome.
Yeah, they don't have that as a responsibility for themselves and to offer that with their client.
Right. It's something that comes from inside. It's a mindset. And what you view your role as, how you want others to perceive you. Okay. But it's not just being a cog in the wheel or a plug in the system. Okay, I got brought in. Okay, well, here's the tactical or the, here's how we're going to do the loan. And it's just a very tactical, practical, pragmatic, just kind of straightforward. Almost anybody can do that.
Checking the box kind of thing.
Checking the box, right? But what if there's more than one box to check?
Yeah.
Well, there's only one box on the list. There's one way to do this. Well, what if there wasn't just one way to do this, right? And I know in the textbook it says that, that first you start with this, and then you start with this, and then you start with this. But what if we considered something else in front of all of that, and based on that consideration, it changed what the boxes said?
Yeah.
So now you'd be checking a different box, right?
An incredible amount of equity.
So so the result of that to the buyer, the owner, the borrower, whatever it is, whoever it is that we're talking about, winds up being additional equity, means minimized costs and things like that. But you don't just hope and wind up there. Okay.
Yeah.
It's
not automatic.
Well, it's certainly not automatic. If it was, we wouldn't have to, everybody would just get it. Right. So that's why when I first started out, I sandwiched a second out of the three options in there. There's a strategy level to leadership. That's what I'm referring to when we're talking about, okay, we're going to take a different road, like we're going to take the high road or the low road, the easy road, not the not so easy road. Let's look at this a few different ways just to make sure that we're making the right decisions. To me, that's leadership. That's ownership over that transaction. It's a reason why someone would come to me or somebody like me, somebody that is looking at a transaction that way. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, they want to be taken care of, right? They want to feel like they got, in their mind, it just kind of washes out to, hey, I got the best deal I could. Am I getting a good
just
deal?
A dollar
right?
figure rather than you doing your due diligence and them having peace of mind that you've done it, which is how you operate.
Right. That peace of mind comes from their exchange with me. It comes from their exchange with the real estate agent. It comes from their exchange with whoever the professional is involved in whatever area it is that they're wondering or thinking about. Is this being done right? Am I getting the best deal? Is this the right way? Is this the right way to go? They just don't always know. They can't always enunciate it that way because they don't, it's just a feeling. It's just a feeling inside, Kind of like when you go to the doctor and the doctor gives you a diagnosis. Let's say it's not the best diagnosis and you wonder now they're like, hey, you know what? We should get a second opinion. Okay. Now, they do that in some cases for legal reasons and things like that. But let's just set all the legalities aside. And we're just talking about taking care of the person, right? They want to feel confident in the decision that they're either making or is being made for them or they're taking part in.
Getting the best possible care.
Right. They're not in the position they don't feel like they're in a position to make that final decision, right? And so we're trying to take care of the person. That means taking care of their feelings. That means instilling in them that confidence that we are doing this the right way, the best way to achieve your goals or whatever. And I don't know, maybe I'm making like a bigger deal out of the loan part of it than would ordinarily happen, but that's the box I live in.
Yeah.
I beat it up pretty well.
Well, I think that's your plight. That is, and so many things about these boxes. I just see a page. You said we talked about a box to check. I see a page with lots of boxes on it that you have shown me over the course of these 10 episodes of the Michael Miget HomeWise Radio show. And today we're talking about leadership, which, gosh, you think of it as a general thing when you're thinking about your mortgage and your lender. But gosh, it's so important. Mastery, ownership, which is a responsibility over the outcome. And I just think, wow, that is so dead on. You need to know that for your peace of mind.
Yeah. And something unique to what I do. So I'm a mortgage broker. Okay. That's a subset of, within the category of mortgage lender or mortgage originator. But I'm a mortgage broker. It means that I have a legal fiduciary duty to my clients. Okay. Oh, I know that's a legal term. It's a big word.
Well, go ahead. Would you explain that word for us? Fiduciary.
We're not going to dive real deep, but just it means acting in my client's best interests, putting their interests ahead of my own. Okay.
Man.
Mortgage brokers have it. Mortgage lenders do not. Okay. That doesn't mean that lenders don't act in people's best interests, but it just means that as a mortgage broker and other agency relationships involved in transactions, such as the real estate agent generally has a fiduciary duty to their client. Something that doesn't come up very often, but it's putting your client's interests ahead of your own. Now, legally, that would occur at the transaction level, and we're going to dive into that later on in our second segment with our guest expert today. So that's coming up here soon.
Yes.
But just to finish this thought, for me to go back to leadership, right? And we talked about mastery, and we talked about having a strategy, and we've talked about all of these different things. When you wrap it up, for me, if I am going to truly, at the end of the day, when I'm done working with somebody, say that I fulfilled my fiduciary duty, I have a higher duty of myself than what the law would say.
A standard.
See, the law would be like, well, did you check the box?
Yeah.
Right? Not necessarily like, well, it may not have been the best box to check, but it's the only box I had to check. Well,
yes.
For me, I want to make sure I've got enough boxes to check to make sure that I'm producing the best outcome that I can, even when it would be easier to go another road.
Yes.
Now that would be putting my interests ahead of the clients.
More clients,
right?
more,
well, it was easier,
run them through.
I didn't feel like doing it that way. It was going to be a whole lot more work. And, I just didn't think I was going to get paid for it. Because see, we get paid the same, no matter whether we just inch it over the line or whether we hit it out of the park. Singles and home runs in my business count for the same thing.
Wow.
Loan, that's how we get paid.
Man.
But fiduciary duty would actually require that we do put all of those other interests ahead of our own, likely even getting paid or not.
Yeah. That's part of your business.
Right. Just for me, though, is, I take that mastery seriously. And so I when I think of this, I lump all of that in there.
Yeah.
And it's oftentimes when I'm involved in these transactions that I see that sorely lacking. All right. So I wanted to sum up today. It's episode 10. It's the finale of season 1. We're coming back for season 2. But I wanted to bookend the first 10 episodes with this big idea because I think it sums up better than any other way that I could. I don't think I could say it a better way.
Yeah, I think it's brilliant.
Than that. So helping me unpack this at the transaction level as the real estate transaction as a whole is what we're going to talk about in segment 2.
That's another element of this, and we had a stimulating conversation off the air about fiduciary responsibility, and our guest is going to bring that to the airwaves next, and I really appreciate it. And by the way, congratulations on a second season, Michael.
Thank you.
It's going to be a lot of fun, and I can't wait to be part of it. We'll be right back. HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. Check out HomeWiseRadio.com, and you can learn more. You can also listen back to the other previous 9 episodes or even more in this segment, which I think is absolutely crucial. We'll be right back. Hello. It's HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget, and I'm Paul Cook. So many cool things still to come in this episode 10. Wow. News Talk STL, a big part of how we deliver the show to you, but also at HomeWiseRadio.com. And the creator of the show is Michael Miget, and I always think it's good to get to know him a little bit better. Product of Hazelwood East. You won't say it, but I'm going to say it. The valedictorian of your class.
That is where I went to high school.
That is where I will confirm that part.
It is a fact.
It is a fact. Well, I don't know if the listeners know about your family. Are you married?
Yep.
And you've got some little ones running around?
Yep. 2 kids, 12 and 7.
Man, you got a lot going on.
Yep.
And with the holidays coming up, you'll be even busier. Same with your wife.
Yep.
I bet, with a lot going on there. Okay, good. It's good to get to know you a little bit. Now, you've been talking about leadership, which, gosh, go back and listen. I think your take on that is very important, and it always gets me thinking in my head, kind of including so much more in what a term like leadership means. But the other element of that is our guest here today.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. We've been talking about leadership, what it means to the just the real estate industry and ultimately the transaction as a whole. And as you know, we search out the best guests, the best experts that we can to help us peel these things apart. So today I want to introduce Josh Voyles. He's the owner of Voyles Realty, and he's in studio to help us peel this apart.
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
Thanks, Josh. We've been talking about leadership. We've been talking about what that means. So to me, it means doing, taking an ownership or leader of just in the things that you do. All right. So we discussed being at the top of the industry, being a leader. We discussed being having mastery over the transaction, things at the transaction level. We even discussed a little bit about fiduciary duty. So why don't you, we're going to weigh in on all that, but why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself first, and we'll start that way.
Sure. Just a little bit about my business or
Yeah, everything.
If you were writing a memoir, Josh, we need to know your personal, intimate thoughts. We need to know every single thing. No, you got it right. Exactly what Michael was
the dark
saying.
secrets too?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
We promise not to share them with anyone.
Oh, that's going to take a little while then. Well, a little bit about me. I grew up from a family who were builders and contractors in St. Louis. So grandfather, uncle, father were builders. I followed that trade, and then I jumped into the real estate sector at some point, and been working on building a small team. I got a great group around me that I've worked hard to teach them how to do things the right way. And excuse me. As far as like some of the leadership stuff, I did spend some time in local politics. I sat on the board of aldermen in the city of Fenton for 2 years. I was appointed to be the president of the board after the first year, and then I ran for mayor after that first term, and I won the mayor race.
You were the mayor of Fenton.
I was.
Okay, that
is super cool.
That qualifies as leadership, doesn't it? I think
absolutely.
I think so.
It was a lot of work. It was a great learning experience. There was a lot of tough things to figure out and learn along the way, and certainly a lot more than it would appear from the outside looking in.
Mm-hmm. When you win that election, all of it's like, yeah, you'll get it. You're a great personality.
Say yes or no. It's no big deal, and then you feel the weight of all those decisions.
Check the box.
Amplify.
Right.
So, and like you were saying earlier, the importance of fiduciary or just doing what's right for everyone, at least for me, it's an important thing.
Right.
So I took it very seriously, and there's a lot of things to do that I didn't always want to do, and it didn't make sense, especially when you don't get paid a whole lot.
Right. Well, yeah, and that was always one of my things with public office was it's such, like, you're under the microscope. Well, first you got to, like, fight tooth and nail to actually get elected. So, like, just my hat's off. Don't have one on, but if I did, I would take it off to you for getting elected.
That was tough.
I'm not sure I could do it. I'm not sure I could do it.
We campaigned very tough. I knocked on every door in the city multiple times.
Right.
I mean, I spent a lot of time campaigning.
Yeah.
Wow. That's really cool.
See, and that's more of, so you're
Out there
doing
knocking.
that, and you're not getting paid a commensurate amount, which, for some reason, like in our society, we equate like every time you do something, like you got to get paid to do it. Otherwise, people wonder why you're like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. What's
Like,
your
it's
motive?
It's a
if you're
shame
not-
that it's has come down to that. But it just, to me, it just says, you know, when I heard that, I was like, you know, I got to get him on because I want, that's like, it's probably like just nerdy me. That's like the interesting, the most interesting thing to me is just like, you know, it says something about the person. So, and that's, I know you would never, from the time we've spent talking, those are things you would never say about yourself, but I can say that here because it's my show.
Yes.
So, the other thing I was also going to, so not only, because I'm looking at the sheet here, you also hold leadership positions in a couple of associations.
I do. With the St. Louis Association, we'll be sitting on the board of directors next year, chairing a committee, and I'm sitting on several other ones, as well as the Missouri board of directors. I'll be sitting on that for the next couple of years, too.
Okay. So 2 Missouri boards. Well, one Missouri board, and then the St. Louis area board. They're big boards, so it's no small feat. Mayor Fenton, like, can we, 20-year real estate agent, construction background.
Sure.
I don't know. This just screams expert to me.
Oh, I also I quit my job in 2008 during the recession to start my own remodeling company. So,
Okay, right.
So there's,
like you weren't busy enough.
No, I just like to challenge life and status quo sometimes.
Right. So if I were involved with a transaction, with you in a transaction, and it came down to things like appraisals, inspections, stuff like that, you're going to have a handle on that, it sounds like.
Sure.
Okay. So why don't I wanted to ask those questions because, me personally, I have not sat on the board of an association. I have not held a public office. I have not done those things. My version of leadership, it's really kind of more of a, call it thought leadership, right? So I'm gravitating to that mastery, like I'm the go-to guy for how to do, and then fill in the blank with, with whatever it is. But this is another angle of that. But I wanted to bring this back to and tie down to the leadership in the real estate transaction, just somebody like taking charge of that. Is that something that, like, does that resonate with you, or?
Sure. Like you were saying in the first segment, taking ownership of the transaction, and also I guess that ties in with your fiduciary, but basically making sure that we're doing what's right for everyone. At the end of the day, no matter what side of the coin I'm on, whether it's the buyer or the seller, at the end, everyone, the buyer wants the home, the seller wants to sell it. And I think it's our duty to make sure we do what's in the best interest of everyone. And sometimes if the ball's dropped on one side, I feel like it's still our job to pick it up if we need to.
Yeah. And that's exactly, I'm that same way. And sometimes I can tell it doesn't happen a lot. Okay. But sometimes you get involved in a transaction and nobody's like, it's like the hot potato. Like nobody wants to hold
hanging out
right?
there kind of thing.
But guess what? You know what? The thing's not going to close. It's not going to happen unless somebody takes charge.
Exactly.
And it's not going to happen in your client's best interest if somebody doesn't take charge. It seems like that's so important to you.
It is. And, I've taught the girls in our team that are working with our buyer clients now the same thing. And I said, if the other side's not doing their job, you need to pick it up and do it for them. Because at the end of the day, it's our client. We want them to move into this home, and that's important to us. That's more important than anything else.
Yeah.
That's Josh Voyles, by the way, Voyles Realty and so many other things. A great guest on HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget. Check out homewiseradio.com.
Yep. So you've talked about, we've talked about the expertise angle. We've talked about the ownership of the transaction. So if something's not getting done, regardless of whether it's necessarily our responsibility or not, we're either going to do it or I'm going to tap somebody gently on the shoulder and suggest that it get done. Because it's one client, it's one transaction, it has many moving parts. And because it has many moving parts, there are several service providers providing professional services to make these things come together and happen. the reason why somebody's got to take charge is because somebody has to orchestrate that. So if you think of like an orchestra, that's a great analogy. There's the individual people who are playing the instruments, but then there's a conductor. He didn't have an instrument, but he's arguably the most important person there because he's got that wand thing. I don't know what that's called.
Yes.
The power.
The power. That's the Harry Potter power.
Well, it's right. So if he's not doing his job, it's not going to sound very good. Right. So that's kind of what
just a bunch of instruments blowing out,
Right. That's what I think of
alone
when I think of a transaction such as the buying, the buying of a house. So I have here network of trusted service providers as a way, as part of, taking charge of that. Is that,
yeah, I mean, it's super important to have people you can rely on and trust on. We have partners that we work with, and it makes our job a little bit easier knowing that we have other professionals we're working with. And not to say some people aren't, but some people are not. And they make our life a little bit worse, and we have someone who either does not, or as you said earlier, just wants to inch over the line.
Right.
I actually really love that analogy. I may use that, so thank you.
Feel free.
Just you need to quote him back. He needs the credit on it. I want you to go on that as well. What about that? If somebody drops the ball, you want your team and you to pick it up and help the client the best you can. Do you leave that dropped ball person, since they've been kind of signed up there into the whole thing, and you just try to help them along?
Well, we usually can't just kick them out.
Yeah, okay,
So
that's the question.
It's one of those things when we're picking up the ball, it's already because we've already gently asked and gently nudged, and at some point it's just someone needs to take charge and let's get this thing moving forward.
Great point.
Yeah, and the ultimate answer to that question is it just depends on what it is, what was dropped, what's not getting done. Nobody wants to kick a service provider out of a transaction. I cannot actually think of one where that was actually necessary or it happened, but you will sometimes, like, it gets threatened, I guess. And it's just, I don't know. Sometimes that rubs me the wrong way or whatever, but, I try to work, I try to work with everybody.
And you're like the show, educating and informing people. Maybe that person is, at a certain point in their career where they don't know, and you're helping them as well, even though, I know that's not your main business.
Depends.
Yeah.
It just really depends.
It's not always the service provider. Sometimes it's the co-op agent or brokerage. So,
yeah. I mean, it could be anybody, but it's usually, and this is this thing's really an onion. You're peeling back layer after layer after layer after.
Another great Michael Miget analogy.
After layer of it. So, and it may be best to talk about it in terms of an example, but like one of these points oftentimes is the home inspection. And borrowers know that it affects the transaction, and oftentimes I'll get that call. Here's what happened. Here's what looks like it's going to happen. Here's what they found. How does this work?
Some curveballs.
And, well,
maybe with the inspection.
Yeah.
Always.
Some I was just going to say.
Well, and I get why they're coming to me, right? But I also, and it's sometimes it's indicative of, I guess, the relationship they perceive with the other people in the transaction, because really they should be talking to somebody else about that.
Talking to the agent.
Yeah.
And the agent should have already reached out after the inspection saying, hey, if they weren't there, what'd you guys think? What are your thoughts? Got the report.
Right.
I read it. Let's talk.
Right.
So
if I'm getting that question, and the first question I always ask is, have you talked to your agent about this yet? Because that's really like they're going to be the one, no matter how this turns out, they're the ones that are going to do something. Like it's either you're going to stay, you're going to go, you're going to renegotiate, like what, and
that action.
I'll do the best I can to kind of lay out the different scenarios of what this is. Here's what I think, and you got to be careful with that because you don't want to step on toes. There's no need to throw anybody under the bus or anything like that. But again, it's how I perceive my involvement in a transaction. I got to make sure they're taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
So irregardless of why they're calling me, if I sidestep the thing, they feel like they got nothing.
Yeah.
And so that's not a good, that's not a good thing either.
Does that fall under fiduciary responsibility?
No, not the legal,
Mm-hmm.
not the legal version. But with me, when I do that, take a step back and look at the transaction as a whole when it's done, and how do I feel about it? How did I do?
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm always looking to get better.
That falls under the agent fiduciary, though. We have a fiduciary for the duty and care of our clients.
Okay.
And look out for their best interest.
Man, well, we're running short on this segment. I know you have a lot more on that, which I know Michael wants to tap into as well. Will you stick around here for this next segment we have coming up on HomeWise Radio?
Sure.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah. We've got that coming up. Thanks so much for listening. By the way, that is Josh Voyles, joshvoyles.com, VOYLES.com. And we'll give you more about his phone number and how to get a hold of Michael Miget coming up next. Thanks so much for listening, and check out HomeWiseRadio.com. It's HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget, and I'm Paul Cook. Been really cool to be involved. This is our 10th episode, our last of the year, renewed for another year. And Michael, congratulations on that.
Thanks, Paul.
And I think we've been, that's happening because we have such great guests and such great expert, like you said, mastery from what you're bringing that's unique.
Yeah, and, I try to plan the show, so you refer to me as a creator of the show. Thank you. I think of myself that way, but
a mad scientist.
Wasn't always, this show, it actually is a creation. There's a lot of thought that goes into it, although I think I spend an equal amount of time making it try and look like there isn't a lot of thought that goes into it. Just, that's... The format's a little different. We've kind of talked about the limitations of the format before, even now that we've added video so you can watch now. We're still not like whiteboard, like PowerPoint kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
So,
but it is so real. It's real points.
And it's the real world that we live in, right? So I've talked before about the difference here is that when we're giving advice, when we're talking about things, it's reflective of what we're actually seeing, what we're actually doing. We have the advantage of being able to sit face to face, nose to nose, toes to toes, screen to screen in some cases, with our clients. And so we can give advice or do things, say things that the experts who don't can't.
Don't have that experience either.
And just to me, I think that's helpful.
Absolutely.
So we were talking about the concept of fiduciary duty. And we kind of hit a groove on that because you feel the same way that I do, Josh, that act in the client's best interest. And I know everybody says that, but, to what extent do you act in their best interest? Do I act in their best interest and adequately fulfill my role, job at, the role in the transaction? Do I do a good enough job? Or do I do the best damn job that I can?
Knowing all that you know.
And outside of transactions, do I teach myself, learn, educate, research, study, experiment, with things that can make me better so that I can do
constantly learning,
job.
reading, exactly
right?
like you're saying.
That's that idea of mastery. But, talking about just, fiduciary duty, it's a word that doesn't come up very often. But it was interesting that I think, I told you earlier when I told you what I was going to talk about, you actually knew what I was talking about. This is the first time I've been in a room with a real estate agent where I've said that and like eyeballs didn't roll back, head spin around, ask me, what are you talking about?
Yeah. Like, what do you mean?
Sad to hear that, but
well, it is.
I was going to say earlier when you talked about doing the right thing, sometimes I think on the transaction, doing the right thing is the things that we don't necessarily want to do sometimes. It's extra effort. Maybe we can get away with not doing it, but when it's the right thing for our client, those are the things that do make the difference.
Right. Right. I would say that most of the I don't know. And see, it comes back to a mindset.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And it's what do you perceive what do you perceive your role to be in the transaction, in the industry, if you own your own business or if you work for another company within that organization, right? How do you conduct yourself? And I find that it's not only oftentimes at work, but it's also in life. It's a lifestyle. It's a mindset, because we might have different roles in life, but we got one brain and one body. And it's hard to sort of be one person one way and then someone else in another place, right? So I find this tends to be a mindset and just how you look at things.
Yeah, and it seems like it's coming from him as well with a personal responsibility you feel.
Sure. I was always
everything
taught growing up that we do things right the first time. My uncle was a great mentor to me and taught me a lot of great things. And as a young man, I didn't understand half of what he told me. But as I get older, they pop back up, and I'm like, oh, that's good stuff.
Isn't that true?
But It's also, I think, your perception on your business, too. I plan on doing this well beyond the day that I die, and I hope that's well past 125. So I'm in here for the long haul.
It might be.
Well,
modern medicine, you never know.
Yeah.
See, I even watched the commercials, too, and there was a commercial that said something about the first person to live to be 150 is likely already been born.
Is that right?
Yeah. So I don't know if it's true.
I like that claim.
It was 100, but I've been working out a lot lately and eating healthy, so I feel like I can bump this up to 125, 150 range.
I hope I'm here to watch that.
Yeah, me too.
I've got to change some lifestyle stuff, though.
Well, I'm okay with living longer as long as we can maintain quality of life, right?
Yeah.
Amazon will have drop shipping by then, and Google, and they'll coordinate and get new body parts and get them installed at Walmart, and things are good.
Well, and it's, and now this whole other swath of thoughts just came into my mind about seniors and long-term care and things like that are issues with the
financially
extension of it's the issues with the extension of the retirement period of our life. And, having enough money set aside to account for that. So we're living longer, but people are retiring still. Like this idea that there's a retirement age and it's in our 60s was something that was set a long time ago when people didn't live into their 90s and into their hundreds. We were lucky to live into our 80s.
Yeah.
Right. And so you might spend 10 years in retirement. And so a retirement system that was built to account for that miserably falls apart when you start to extend that.
Fascinating. You're right.
Extend that so long.
It's old thinking.
One of the third or fourth level sort of implications of what we talk about on this show with the family home, the equity being so important is, and I think I've said this once before, is reverse mortgages are going to become a bigger piece of the puzzle as we move forward, because a lot of seniors are winding up in retirement and it's a significant concentration of their assets. So their goal is and always has been to, they kind of view it as like that's a nest egg we want to pass on to our kids. It's our money, our wealth, our legacy, or whatever. May not have that luxury anymore, And so reverse mortgages are going to be a key to sort of help unwind or help deal with that. It's the liquefaction of that home equity in controlled fashion over a period of time, mixed with, there's multiple different ways. And I don't want to get too deep into it because that's, that's someone else's mastery. But mixed with insurance products to guarantee things. So there's lots of different ways to do that. But just as a subject matter as a whole, you're going to see that become more and more important as time goes on.
And we're living longer. There's some people, I think, that have created that as a bad connotation, the reverse mortgage. Have you run into that older thinking about that?
Yeah. They are, it's So we talk about the mortgage being the necessary evil, right? People don't like them. It's, well, I want to get a house, but I can't write a check to pay cash, so I guess I'll have to take out a mortgage. Goal is to take out their goal. If you just ask anybody, my belief is this is part of the wrong, but the goal, shortest, smallest mortgage that I can. Completely directly opposite to what Rick Edelman say, which is the longest, biggest mortgage you can afford. Okay. But people think that because they don't want the mortgage.
Yeah.
Right?
They feel it.
They feel it.
A lot of this is about feeling, isn't it?
Well, because we're humans, we're feeling beings. That's how we perceive the world. We perceive it, we perceive it in that way. So they just don't like mortgages. All right. So the goal is to get your house paid off. It's like a rite of passage. Paid that mortgage off. We got mortgage burning parties, things like that. So when you are looking at that, someone who generally has a paid off home, and now you want to turn around and you try and want to use that for retirement, that is going against that entire thought process, right? So now think of this, right? And this is one of the struggles with the industry, is the mindset that it takes to get to the point where you have a paid off house is not the same mindset that says it's okay to turn around and do the exact opposite, to use your home to pay for your retirement.
It feels
right?
conflicting.
I want to keep a paid off. I worked so hard to get a paid off house. I want to keep a paid off house, right?
Like, you paid off your house. Why are you going to go buy something else?
Yeah. So it's a struggle. Like, why, how do you reconcile that, right? So it comes down to, well, I will spend everything else I've got. I'll do everything I can as a last resort. Oh, it's a last resort product. Okay. Generally how it's thought of. All right. Now that perception is starting to change. I think because more and more people are winding up in that last resort position. Okay. Which, by the way, a reverse mortgage used intelligently by someone that knows what they're doing, it can be used as a tool to extend the life of your other assets. Right?
Okay.
So if you've got a strong financial planner, smart financial planner, and you're listening to him or her, and they're talking about things like sequence of return risk and drawdown risk and things like that occur over time. There are strategies of using reverse mortgages to minimize or push back on some of those risks. So in other words, if you're in a position where you're drawing down your retirement account year after year to pay, which is what it's there for, okay? It was designed to draw down, not to necessarily transfer. You don't want to draw it down or take money out during a down market, because you have to sell more and more of the securities or whatever's in there to get whatever that amount of money is that you need. And then when the market comes back, whatever you took out isn't there to go back up. So a financial planner, if he has another source of funds, would look at doing something else during those times.
During a time where you're scared or you have fear about money and quality of life.
So there's a strategy where, okay, we'll use the house. We'll use that to pull the funds from to live on instead of selling out of the account. Then when the market comes back or it looks like it's a more favorable time, we'll take the money out of the account to pay back the reverse mortgage, right? So it's not that you're using the home to live off of, but you're using it as a tool to extend the life of your other assets. Now that's a very high level cursory overview. I am not a licensed financial planner. I cannot do those things.
Good strategy. I love it.
Studied the applications of a reverse mortgage, the way that it works in retirement, and that during that time when I did operate in that space.
It's very fascinating, though. I want to ask our guest, Josh Voyles, of the owner of Voyles Realty. What do you think about all that? I know you're more on the realty side, but
Sure.
how does
It's a
that
lot.
hit you?
You know, I think sometimes life throws us some interesting curveballs, and we have to work with what we have or what we can do. And I don't know that I have an opinion one way or another on reverse mortgages. I would probably be more in the camp of pay my house off, and I would struggle to want to borrow against something that I worked hard to pay off. But I suppose if you're in a situation where this makes more sense or that's your only option, then it's nice to have these things to do. So
A tool.
And that's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mhm.
And there's
Like
nothing
a
wrong.
strategy.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's,
There's no right or wrong.
Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. But it's interesting, you can use a reverse mortgage to buy a house too.
Wow. You don't ever think about that. You don't think about that kind of thing.
Well,
I hadn't either.
it's not common knowledge.
Yeah.
But you can use it, and depends on how old you are, depends on a lot of factors. But you show up and, you have money to put down. You put down, it's in the neighborhood of half, let's say 40 to 60%. And then the rest of it's financed with a reverse mortgage. And then the equity that you put down will basically subsidize the rest of the time over which you're going to own that house.
That is fascinating. And by the way, that's Michael Miget. You're listening to HomeWise Radio. I hate that we've run out of time here on this episode, but we got to hit that in the new year.
Oh,
That's
we will.
really fascinating.
We will. I have a lot of ideas for the new year, lots of planning, and just we'll
Stick
keep
with
a little
us.
bit. We'll keep a little bit under hat for now, but
Okay.
yeah. So don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere. JoshVoyles.com. Josh, is this your number? 314-495-7064?
Sure is.
Sure is, buddy. Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for your public service, being the mayor of Fenton, and for joining us today.
Sure, it was a pleasure to be here with you guys. I've enjoyed the conversations.
All right. Great job. Great job. And how do we get a hold of Michael Miget?
Well, you can get a hold of me for mortgage-related stuff. Mortgage website is goshelter.com. You can also reach me direct about anything at 314-275-0314.
All right. Well done. And I'm Paul Cook. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today. It's HomeWise Radio with Michael Miget, and we will see you in the new year.
HomeWise with Michael Miget.
Loan and loan information provided by Michael Miget, NMLS number 205402, and Shelter Mortgage, Inc., 691 Trade Center Boulevard, Chesterfield, Missouri, 63005, NMLS number 192609, a Missouri residential mortgage license.